welcome to another kamicarzCreations video. Just doing a few finishing touches. Really looking forward to getting the little UC Torana off the hoist. It's been on there for months. Engine's running really nicely at the moment, fingers crossed. Starts really easily, needs a bit of a tune. Carby might need a little bit of work, but generally she's running really nicely. She's not straight out of the extrackies anymore, and I'll show you that in a minute. I picked up a few online exhaust bends and have just adapted it. It's not perfect, but at least I've got it through to the diff now, and she's a fair bit quieter. I'll start her up and let you have a listen to that. But that's going to allow me to get it to an exhaust shop and tidy it up. It's probably sitting a little bit low where I've routed it, but it's working okay. So a couple of things, because I've changed the gearbox in the process of this build, gone from a Celica 5-speed to the Aussie M24 speed. I've actually got to change the yoke on the end of the drive shaft, and that's really the main focus at the moment. I haven't put any clamps on the exhaust as yet. I've just got it running up there, but I'm just working on getting this drive shaft right. I've also got to change the speedo cable because it's a different drive setup, and I've got a little bit of tidying up to do on the steering column, just that main seal that runs through the firewall, to get that in there and then get the steering column locked off. So that's what I'm doing at the moment, but I'll show you this drive shaft and the unis and what I'm doing there. So here's my drive shaft, same one as I had in the car before, and here's my couple of yokes. This is the original yoke that goes to the Celica 5-speed, so I'll be keeping that, because the 5-speed will probably go in the red Torana, the LH, with the supercharged 202. But this is the new yoke, so this is an M20 4-speed yoke, courtesy of my good mate Terry, who helps me out a lot with this car and just general advice. Young fella that knows a fair bit about cars, pretty smart bloke, and he's got a fair few parts, so he's given me this yoke at a reasonable price. And I bought a few or a couple of new universal joints, just an online, could have been Resto Country or something like that. And I've got this uni. I've taken the old one out of this yoke and I've put this uni in, and so far so good. Pivots quite nicely, and I've now got to put that yoke into the drive shaft. So it's just basically a simple matter of taking these bearings off, sitting the yoke inside there, sitting the yoke down inside here, putting the caps on the outer sides and getting them located on the universal joint, and then tapping them through. It's a very tight fit, and it does lock up the universal joint initially, but a little bit of tapping and rubbing and it loosens up quite nicely. This one was really tight when I first put it in. There's a couple of circlips, I don't know whether you can get down just inside here. There's a circlip on the inner edge of these guys, and getting that bearing cap all the way down, it actually compresses down onto this seal quite nicely, and you just got to persevere with it. Get it down there, lock it off, and then just give it a little bit of tap to free it up, and it's really nice at the moment. So I'm going to fit that into the drive shaft, and then I'll probably tackle the other end. So I'm just in the process of I've taken those couple of bearing caps off there, and you can see I've got the yoke sitting in there, and I've got one cap on this end, and this is the other cap, and you can see there's a whole heap of little needle rollers in there, so you just got to be careful when you fit it up that you don't dislodge any of those, and it's just a matter of sliding it down in and getting it to locate on the start of that universal joint, and then just tapping them home. So I've just held that yoke in place, and I'm only using a small tapometer, just a little hammer, just to give her a bit of a tap. So I've held that in place and just tapped that initial cap down so that both the caps can locate on the universal. And you can see this one hasn't been tapped in at all yet, but I can get it to locate on the universal as the main thing. So I'll now tap that one in and then I'll show you before I drive them home. Rightio, so they're both located on the universal. All the needle rollers are in place, and I'm just going to drive them home and get a bit of free play on this universal at the end, and ultimately I've got to be able to get those circlips or retaining clips on the inside of that drive shaft yoke faces. So I've taken that first one home, and honestly they don't take much pressure, but you can see there, if I get over the top of it, you can see where that retaining clip will clip on. So I'm just going to clip that one on and then put the one on from the other side. Rightio, so that's all in place. Does its wobbly thing all quite nicely. You can see down in there, maybe you can see the retaining clips sitting down in there. Very important you put those on, and it all fits up quite nicely. So the last thing to do is a little grease nipple into that hole so you can lube the whole thing, and then I'll do the other end and it's ready to fit in the car. So there's the universal on the other end, the new beauty. You can see the retaining clips sitting in there. Again, reverse order. Make sure you take those retaining clips out when you're driving the universal joint out, otherwise you won't get it out. And that went in really easy. It has to be one of the easiest jobs I've done on this car. Just trying to get that back in focus for you. And the other caps will just sit back on, and they'll be clamped into the diff with a U-clamp over here, again retaining clips on. So I'll show you that when I get it up in the car. So we have transmission. Here's the drive shaft hooked up into the yoke. Now you've got your U-bolt that goes around here, and that circlip that I was putting on, or retaining clip, is still on that same bearing cap, but just on the inside, and that will retain this universal joint from moving side to side, keeps it centered so you don't get any vibration in your tail shaft. But that's all in there, that's good. And we actually have transmission up into the gearbox. I haven't put any oil in the gearbox, and I haven't got the speedo cable hooked up yet, or the clutch, so I've got a few little things to do. And as you can see, here is the exhaust setup. So I bought these few bits and pieces online, some bends and some reducers. Up here you can see the reducer sitting on there, onto the bend, and I had to cut a little bit off the end of the pipe here, but it's sitting pretty well. It misses the drive shaft, which it didn't when I initially put it in, but I feel it is sitting a little bit low, so it might be something that we've got to have a look at, but it'll be enough to get it down to an exhaust place and have a bit of adjustment. So after all of that, and replacing the unis on the original drive shaft, she is a little bit too short. I measured the silica box from the bell housing face down to here, and it's about 30 mil longer, so it would have been running about here. So I'm going to have to source a new drive shaft. This will get me moving but I'll have to source a new drive shaft, and then I'll swap them back over, and then she'll be good. So it's all learning, and it's all fun in the shed. So guys, that's it for now. I've been messaging mate, and he's going to have a look at what drive shaft he's got laying around. No biggie. It will move on that drive shaft. There's about 30 or 40 mil up in the spline, so it's enough to move it, but really not enough to leave it there. So that's all good. Doesn't take much to knock those unis out and fit a new drive shaft to it, and I'll keep working on some other bits and pieces and get this thing back on the ground and get it moving. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Bye for now.